For the past 10 days or so, I've been using Apple's iPhone 14, the base model, which looks a lot like the iPhone 13. This is a minor upgrade for some, but it's going to be a huge upgrade for others. I'm Jason Cipriani, and in this ZDNET video, I'm going to explain exactly what I mean by that. Alright, so here it is, iPhone 14 in blue. It looks just like the iPhone 13, which is where a lot of people are going to get hung up in this year's upgrade cycle. To be clear, Apple released the iPhone 14 and announced the iPhone 14 Plus, which is available for pre-order right now and will begin shipping on October 7th. But they also announced the iPhone 14 Pro and the 14 Pro Max. And this year, for the very first time, Apple has really drawn that proverbial line in the sand between the base iPhone 14 standard iPhone 14 line and the Pro line as well. And what I mean by that is the iPhone 14 uses the same processor as the iPhone 13. There's a slight change to it. And the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max have a brand new processor, a slightly tweaked design when it comes to the display. There's that dynamic island, which is fun and interactive, and hopefully will gain a lot of new features as time goes on. But as far as the 14 goes, on paper, it seems like a very minor upgrade. So let's start with the design itself. Again, you have a phone that looks identical to the regular 13, except for one thing. You have a 6.1 inch display on this phone. You have a 6.7 inch display on the iPhone 14 Plus. Notice the iPhone 14 mini does not exist this year. That 5.4 inch phone that supposedly people love, the smaller compact size, is now gone. If you still want an iPhone mini, you can get an iPhone 13 mini, but the 14 mini just does not exist this year. There is one slight design change other than the bigger model in the lineup, and you can notice that here on the side of the phone, there is no SIM card tray. Apple has gone all in on what's called an embedded SIM or an eSIM. That means you no longer have to swap the plastic SIM card that we've dealt with for years between devices. For some, this is not an issue. You don't ever travel internationally, you don't switch devices often, you're not even going to notice that the SIM card is gone. However, if you do switch between devices quite often, you're either going to have to contact your carrier quite a bit to help get set up with a new or transfer your SIM card over between iPhone and Android devices, or if you travel internationally, you're going to find that your options are limited as far as what carriers you can sign up and internationally roam on. If you want a data plan, let's say when you're going to Australia, you have a limited amount of carriers that you can use and sign up once you get over there based on the eSIM. As more carriers adopt eSIM technology, that problem will fade away. But for now, there's going to be some bumps in the road in being an early adopter of an eSIM only smartphone. Design, like I said, identical except for that eSIM card. Not a huge deal if you stay here and you don't switch phones all that often. There are several new colors this year. I have the blue phone here, like I said earlier. There's also a midnight, a starlight, a purple, and product red. All right, so let's talk about performance and battery life. There is a few things that are different here, specifically with performance. The A15 Bionic processor is being used in the iPhone 13, has now been used in the iPhone 14, with the addition of one GPU core. So the iPhone 13 had a 4-core GPU. The iPhone 14 has a 5-core GPU. That doesn't mean a whole lot when you look at it on paper. Apple says it translates into about an 18% boost in performance when it comes to graphics. And I can't vouch for that. I've done some benchmarking through Geekbench. The numbers are about the same as what they were on my iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is what I've carried for the last year. And I haven't had any performance hiccups or noticed where, man, this phone feels a lot faster. Granted, it doesn't feel any slower than the iPhone 13. And this is where people get caught up in, is this really an upgrade? It's using the same processor as last year, virtually the same processor as last year. It does have 6 gigabytes of memory compared to 4 gigabytes of memory in the iPhone 13, which is a pretty modest upgrade. If you're coming from Android, you know more RAM means apps stay longer, open longer in the background. Tabs in Safari don't have to refresh as option. And Apple's been pretty stingy with adding more memory to its iPhone lineup. So going up to 6 gigs that's a pretty significant bump from 4 over in the iPhone 13. I can say tabs and apps do stay open or active longer in the background with the iPhone 14 compared to the 13 Pro Max. However, in day-to-day use, it doesn't really matter all that much. That said, the iPhone 13's performance was never bad, and the iPhone 14's performance is certainly not bad. It is still on par with whatever you could throw at me as far as an Android device goes, Z Fold 4, Z Flip 4 from Samsung, or even Motorola's latest Edge device. The iPhone puts all those to shame, whether it's through quantitative benchmarking or through daily experience in using the device. Performance is a non-issue on the iPhone 14, and there's just nothing else to say about it. Now, let's talk battery life, because this is one area where I am somewhat disappointed in the performance of the iPhone 14. Now remember, I came from the iPhone 13 Pro Max, so my battery life expectations were based on a larger screen device with a larger battery that could get me through a full day. Maybe I would hit 20% some days, other days it would be nowhere near that. I consistently hit 20% or below in testing the iPhone 14 over the last 10 days or so. That's a little bit of a concern, but also, like I said, I was used to longer battery life, but still at the end of the day, I had battery going into bedtime. And this is, I'm using a phone for 16 hours a day on and off, checking a lot of emails, Slack messages, Twitter, Reddit, all that stuff, plus playing a game here and there, watching some YouTube videos and whatnot. If I was traveling, without a doubt, on a travel day, like flight to New York, I would have to charge the iPhone 14 at some point in order to make sure I had enough battery to get through a full day of travel. That doesn't happen on their larger screen devices. I'm really interested to see what happens with the 14 Plus and the bigger battery it will have that powers that larger screen. It should hopefully get close to matching what the 14 Pro Max does. I know Apple has its figures and it's not identical, but again, bigger battery, longer battery life, and that launches October 7th, so we shouldn't have too much longer until we can get those in our hands and start testing them out. If you want a base model, you don't want a Pro model, but you need that extra battery life, you have that option this year without having to jump up to the Pro Max and save you some money. So you may want to just skip ordering the 14 and go straight to the 14 Plus. Again, battery life could be a little bit better. Hopefully that's something Apple refines with software updates in iOS 16. They've done a good job of releasing a few updates so far. Hopefully that continues, and battery life is one of those key areas that we see a major improvement. Arguably, the biggest area where Apple has improved the iPhone 14 relies or comes down to the camera. There are still 2 rear-facing cameras on the iPhone 14. There's the main 12 megapixel sensor and then an ultra-wide 12 megapixel. The main camera is where the main updates have been implemented, and it's not as big of an update as the 14 Pro line that has a 48 megapixel sensor now, but the 12 megapixel sensor is taking advantage of new software tweaks and features and processing in what Apple is calling the photogenic engine. It's a cool marketing term, but the end result are some pretty good pictures. I'll share a couple with you right now. They are a lot clearer. The color is a lot brighter and more lifelike. And Apple has done a good job over the years of making photos, a camera app that takes photos without having you think a whole lot about what you're doing. And I would say on the 14, that has once again happened, but even more so. The picture of the sunset is one I took while on a walk. Simply opened the camera app, hit the shutter button, and continued walking. There was zero thought, zero focus, zero anything going into that photo. And when I got home and looked at it, I mean, how can you not love that photo? It's a great picture. So camera, yes, it's huge. Front-facing camera has autofocus now. That makes a big improvement as well. But where the camera really takes off outside of that main sensor is there's a new action mode that you can record video in the iPhone 14 camera app, and it works a lot like Hyper Smooth on GoPro cameras, where they remove any shakiness and they add stabilization beyond what the camera already had for recording video. So if you're recording while you're on a run, the video is smooth, a lot smoother than it is with action mode turned off. The only caveat here is you need to have a lot of light available in order for Apple to do its magic. It's basically cropping the sensor and cutting the shakiness out of your video, so it does zoom in just a little bit while you're filming video. So you can't do this really at night. You won't be able to do any low light photography or videography with this. But action mode definitely takes on what GoPro is trying to do, or does, and has done for years, and it does it very well. And now you have that same level almost of capability in the iPhone. There's a couple action. Actually, I have a clip of me running across my yard without action mode on, and me running across my yard with action mode on, and it's night and day. The differences in stabilization and shakiness. Very cool stuff. I can't wait to see what Apple does with it in the future. Apple also added a couple safety features to the iPhone 14, one of which is live now. It's automatic crash detection. There's a bunch of sensors and algorithms constantly running on your phone, and if it detects the right amount of conditions are met, it will automatically say, hey, you're in a car crash, we need to get you help, and contact emergency services for you. I've already seen a few reports on Reddit of the feature already working for people, unfortunately, who have gotten car accidents. Seems to have done its job and worked perfectly. This is a feature that the Pixel phone has had for a while, so Android fans, yep, you guys have had it first. Apple adding it to the iPhone is a welcome addition, though. The second safety feature Apple has added is what's called Emergency SOS via satellite. Basically, what this, once it's enabled in November, will do is it will allow you to send text messages in areas where you do not have wireless or cellular service via satellites to get help. So if you're hiking, you get in a car accident in an area where you know you don't have cellular coverage, or you're out just anywhere in the mountains, wherever, and you don't have cellular or wireless coverage, you can use a satellite to tell emergency responders where you're at and what's wrong, and help will be on the way. That's massive. I mean, this kind of stuff usually requires a dedicated device, and now it's built directly into your iPhone. Like I said, it doesn't go live until November. It'll be free for the first 2 years. After that, don't really know what Apple's going to charge for it. I imagine they bundle it into their Apple One plan and include it in some sort of subscription there. For transparency, Garmin has a very similar service to this. Plans start at $15 a month that you can use to send messages not only to emergency responders, but to friends and loved ones, just to let them know that, hey, here's where I'm at. And they can actually track you. So it's a little bit more full-featured than what Apple has already announced. Maybe there's more coming to Apple. Maybe there doesn't need to be any more than that. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see once it goes live in November. All right, so bottom line. Look, it's really easy to call Apple out on taking the iPhone 13, making a few slight tweaks to it, and calling it an iPhone 14. It's very easy to call them out on that, and in some regards, maybe everyone should. But let's be clear, this iPhone 14 isn't an upgrade for people who have a 13, and I'd argue even people who have the 12. This upgrade is for people who have had a phone for 2-3 years now, iPhone 11, 10, 10s, and they're in need of an upgrade because their payment plan, whatever, has expired with their carrier, or their phone is just old and they're ready to get something new. The iPhone 14 is a massive upgrade. It has a great processor inside of it. It has a great camera, big improvement camera-wise over the iPhone 13. It has these new safety features, and it's gone to the eSIM, which I know is going to be trouble for some, but for most it's going to be a non-issue, and it's just one less thing to worry about. The iPhone 14 definitely isn't for everyone. Obviously, if you upgraded in the last couple of years, you can skip this one. If you want something that's different, go with the 14 Pro or Pro Max. That's where the different devices and features and Apple's latest and greatest are going to be found now. While the iPhone 14 is for those who just need a phone, need an iPhone, but they want the newest iPhone. And there's a lot to like here in the iPhone lineup. Hopefully the Plus takes care of some of the battery life issues, or if not, the software updates Apple will surely release over the coming days and weeks will address some of that as well. So if you're wanting to upgrade, go ahead and do it. If you have an older device and you're looking for Apple's latest and the Pro just isn't for you. If you have an iPhone 13, I'm confident in saying you can skip the 14. There's not a whole lot that's different. There are a few key features, but nothing that's really worth going out and spending all the money on unless you get a killer upgrade trade-in deal that the carriers like to run. Once again, I'm Jason Cipriani with ZDNET. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to check out ZDNet.com for more great tech news and tech tips.